I'll just keep on rolling till I get home by your side. Hey there, honey, where you been? I said everywhere but here. I sure miss you. Come back home. That's just how this river rolls. That's just how this river rolls. Hey there, honey, where you been? I said everywhere but here. I sure miss you. Come back home. That's just how this river rolls. That's just how this river rolls. As I walk through the valley, there's a thoughtful old sound that's familiar and lovely as the soft gentle ground. But on this old path cast the shadows of change, and once again, darling, our lives rearrange. Oh, it's cruel, but it's certain, and it's hard, but it's sure when life closes curtains and darkness endures. But the darkness won't linger, and the light it shines strong. Change is coming on. Change is coming on. These trials and times, from the sights to the smells, seem to settle so sweetly and suit me so well. But life as I know it sits now in the past. Ain't it funny how nothing seems to last? Oh, it's cruel, but it's certain. It's hard, but it's sure when life closes curtains and darkness endures. But the darkness won't linger, and the light shines strong. Change is coming on. Change is coming on. Oh, it's cruel, but it's certain. It's hard, but it's sure when life closes curtains and darkness endures. But the darkness won't linger, and the light it shines strong. Change is coming on. Change is coming on. Change is coming on. That felt pretty good. Wake me up now, pick me up off the floor. Wake me up now, get me off this floor. I can't stay down here anymore. I've been running for too damn long. Lord, I've been running for too damn long. I'm going back down home where I belong. Back down home, back where I belong. I've been running too damn long. Things move slow on the Gulf of Mexico. I got an old flame living down on the bay. Got an old flame living on the bay. Says I should come down there and stay. I packed up my old dog and an old guitar. Packed up my old dog and an old guitar. I'm gonna make my living singing at the bar. Back down home, back where I belong. I've been running too damn long. Things move slow on the Gulf of Mexico. The sounds I hear, sights I see, show up pieces of my memory. Walking roads of oyster shells, ragged shrimp boats ringing rusty bells. Things move slow on the Gulf of Mexico. I've been running too damn long. Things move slow on the Gulf of Mexico. Things move slow on the Gulf of Mexico. Rolling? The old man says you better get used to sitting around. The days are gonna come when your body starts to hold you down. You best get it in while you're young, 'cause I'm a-telling you, brother, those days are gonna come. So bear down on the throttle and don't let it up till they come round. Amen. Amen. Back at it again. Leave me wishing and wondering when this mess is gonna end. Hollering for a sign and now holler amen. Well, it's not that I'm happy just sitting around and hanging at home, but after a while I get to feeling like I gotta get gone. Only for a little while, and I'll be back with a big old pile and a smile, and we'll remember we're in love when the mist starts to come on. Amen. Amen. Back at it again. We've been wishing and wondering when this mess is gonna end. good times are coming on strong, and it's time to carry on. Amen. Amen. Back at it again. I've been wishing and wondering when this mess is gonna end. Hollering for a sign, and now holler amen. We've been wishing and wondering when this mess is gonna end. Hollering for a sign, and now holler amen. Missing a woman, it's like you can't believe. She gets home from working just as I'm about to leave. Come at a weekend, I'm a million miles away. Guess we'll see each other on some other faithful day. Hey honey, where you been? I said everywhere, buddy. I sure miss you. Come back home. That's just how this river rolls. That's just how this river rolls. Money, money, that don't mean a goddamn thing. That's just only something, something that the rich folks say. Rolling, rolling, rolling down this muddy line. I'll just keep on rolling till I get home by your side. Hey there honey, where you been? I said everywhere, buddy. I sure miss you. Come back home. That's just how this river rolls. That's just how this river rolls. Where you been? I said everywhere, buddy. I sure miss you. Come back home. That's just how this river rolls. That's just how this river rolls.
Hello and welcome everybody to 20 Question Tuesdays. I am the host that you didn't ask for, but you got me anyway. I'm Jeff Plankenhorn. For those who don't know and have never been here before, early on in the lockdown of 2020, I flipped on my camera and started taking questions kind of like a workshop, and on a Tuesday afternoon. And all sorts of beautiful people started showing up. Guitar pickers, songwriters, managers, booking agents, people who don't know anything about music but love music. Well, I love their questions the most of the time anyway. And it was really beautiful. So Sheila Steele from Austin Music TV said, hey, would you like to put your show on the cable access channel in Austin? I said, sure. So I got this fancy re-streamy thing so I could go out to multiple spots and platforms. And ever since then, it has just grown, and it's really, really been something that I love, this 20 Question Tuesdays. My first guest, I think, was Michael O'Connor, and then I had Jamie Harris and Scrappy Judd Newcomb, and then it just started snowballing. Bill Kirchin, Ruthie Foster, Ray Wiley, and I love having music of every genre and people of every kind and ilk that I can get on here. And my favorite thing about this show is that all of the questions come from you, and they get to me either via email from my mailing list or my socials or right here. And you guys ask the most interesting questions, and it's just, I sure love it. Now, we do take tips. I try and make sure that everybody that comes on this show gets a little gas money or something like that. So if you're interested, I mean, he's a new father. So if you're really, really interested and you want to throw a couple of bucks that way, it means the world to us being musicians during this crazy, crazy time. So thank you for that. And tip information should be there on all the socials as well as right here. Thank you. And just a couple of quick things, a little bit of housekeeping for me. Let's see. My Patreon, if you want to help out the show, is right here. And we're going to be talking to Tony about his brand new Patreon when we get on as well. But if you like this show and you like new music from me every month, then that'd be a big help. And if you want to find out about new music from me, it's at plank.hearnow.com. And, of course, those of you who know my website, the hub of all, just put in plank.wtf. That gets you right there as well. So that's no joke. That actually works. But without further ado, and enough about me and what's going on, I'm ready right now to bring up Tony, and I am so happy to have him here. Tony Kamel, what's happening, man?
Hey, there we go. Hey,
Ooh,
Jeff, what's
I'm
up,
gonna.
man?
I feel like I need to turn you up just a smidge. Talk to me.
Cool. Hey, check 1 2. Check 1 2.
Yeah,
Tony
I'm gonna turn
Kamel
you up a
here.
little bit. Everybody, please let me know in the comments. I know you will. It looks like I've got Tony at a good volume, but kick me in the butt if I need to turn myself down or you guys need something turned up. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Yes.
The business of music.
Yeah. The business of music.
The business of music, yes. Yeah, go ahead and turn up yours, Tony, a little if you can.
Hey,
and then,
check 1 2. How's that?
Oh, yeah, that's way better.
Yeah, I think
now we're
I had
happening.
the gain down a little too much.
Well, here's the thing. We were talking about this before the show. The things we have to do now, whether it's playlists or podcasts or this and that, you know what? I'm going to turn me down a little bit, too, and maybe it'll balance everybody up a little. Oh, Matthew Simmons says better. Thank you, Matthew.
Cool.
Everybody
I got
who's
myself
online.
Up a little bit.
There we go. It's just that touch of unprofessionalism that I'm told makes me so lovable.
I guess I could always get closer to the microphone, too.
As if we know how to do that, right? All right, cool. Man, there's so much going on in your world right now. I just want to dive in because I know we've gotten some really, really, really great questions from the audience already, and they kind of are going to jump into all of the things that you want to talk about.
Cool.
And that's just something that I love about these guys. And that I get questions from musicians and people who just love music but don't necessarily play it. So, yeah. So somebody sees Edwina. Is that your microphone there?
Yeah, actually, to answer Randy's question, which I did see as we were getting ready to come on, I did. I own Edwina. I bought Edwina years ago before we even used it in Wood and Wire. So Edwina's mine. It was mine before we started using it. So
for
now
those
I get
who
as
don't
much use
know,
as I can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Edwina
And
is this microphone.
I'll apologize for this. This format makes me interrupt people all over the place, so I apologize in advance.
No problem.
When you are in a one mic, quote unquote, bluegrass type of band, you need a quality mic that you can put up that everybody crowds around, Right. And that way, and what's really, really beautiful about it is just it teaches you so much about singing harmony. It teaches you so much about actually playing your instrument, because when we plug in our instruments, a lot of times we don't think about playing softer and louder. and then it just goes a huge way. When we used to do it, we would use the Audio Technica 4033 because that's
Sure.
what the Del McCurry band used. That's what John Hartford used. And what they would do is they would actually take the monitors on stage and turn them towards the audience because they didn't want to get any feedback. So
Right.
they'd walk into the club and they'd turn around the monitors. But
Yeah, so-
you went so far as to name your microphone.
Well, the company that makes these, they name the models out after kind of old timey female names. So the company is Ear Trumpet Labs. They're based up in Oregon. They make lots of really cool mics, and this mic is designed for the stage. That Audio Technica mic that you were talking about, that's the studio mic. So using it
know.
on a stage is difficult, right? So
It was.
but Wood and Wire used this mic, and we still plugged our instruments in, but we
Sure.
then we crowd around for just vocals. But we eventually abandoned it and went to just straight up normal 58s.
Oh, I was always so sad when that happened, but I understood.
We were lucky. We were lucky
I
to
understood.
be playing. Yeah, we played nice, clubs and bars to where they were big enough to where we needed to be louder. And there's only so much volume you can get when you do it that way.
It's absolutely true, and it gets harder and harder to hear yourself. The other band that was the first, I remember when the Nashville Bluegrass Band started going all on individual mics for their instruments and for their guitars. They still used mics,
Sure.
But it's so hard to not plug in.
It is, and I missed using Edwina as well, but I knew that it was just so hard on our sound guy. And once we went to individual mics, we sounded bigger and better overall. I think for plugging stuff in, if you're going to plug instruments in, they're not going to sound as good as if you have them on a mic. So
Nope.
by having individual mics, our sound guy was able to get the best plugged in tones that he could get, and without having feedback and problems like that.
Now, with regarding your new music, I imagine that since we're still in lockdown, that you probably haven't. Tell me if you've been out with a big band already.
We did. I've done 3 or 4 gigs with a full band. We played in Houston last weekend, and it went great. We sort of hit this groove where we were having a really good time, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been fun to do something different, and I haven't really even played with drums very many times in my career as a whole. So, this is the kind of stuff I liked before I got into bluegrass, and you kind of fell into the bluegrass scene because I fell in love with the music, fell in love with the challenge of playing it, and it went great. It's still going great. It's just I wanted to, between babies and the pandemic and day jobs, this last couple of years, the time was right for me to try to do something on my own.
Yeah.
And it's still got an old timey sound and feel, but I've never traveled around with electric guitar and bass and electric bass and drums and pedal steel guitar. I love that stuff, and I wanted to try it. I wanted to play it, and I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Creatively, no musician should ever keep themselves in one box. And
Here, brother.
I think I should do whatever the hell I want to do, and I'm going to. And so, and it's been.
Have
really
you gotten a lot of
fun.
pushback? Have you? I mean, I imagine
No.
that your fans wouldn't,
No.
because I don't feel like these days it really seems natural for people to go through different times, and different this is when I did a jug band kind of album, and this is when I did a big ensemble.
Sure.
And there's piano on your album too, that the second to last tune we were listening to, maybe it was Back Down Home, had like a nice kind of upright piano sound on it, and it'll take you from getting Lowell George kind of things on one song, and then on other songs there's like a little Leon Russell vibe, and why the hell not? If that's
why the hell
in
not?
you.
And the answer to your question is no. I haven't gotten hardly any pushback, which is one of the cool things about this scene. I think that the scene is open-minded and they want to hear good music, and I hope that's what I'm making. And I know people want to hear Wood and Wire again. So do I. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. I have a lot of faith that it will, but there's a lot of questions in the air. And I don't want to speak for the guys. I know that I can say that I want to do another Wood and Wire show at some point. I just don't know when that's going to happen. I don't know, and I
And
know
another
people are
album.
wondering that, and I'm not trying to hide behind it, but this wasn't a situation where it just, where there was some definitive ending, and there is no ending. There's just a lot of weird stuff happened over the last of a couple of years, over those last couple of years now, and a lot of things changed in our individual lives. I had a baby. Another
Yeah.
guy, Billy Bright, had a baby. There's some day jobs going on, and then there's certainly some personal stuff within the band that we're working out, as there is with any band. But
Well, like I said
I
before we got on, even the Beatles broke up, but you guys didn't break up. You're just pausing, And like,
right, that
Billy
technically that's
Bright,
the case. Yeah, we
yeah,
actually
Billy's your
lasted
mandolin
longer than
player.
the. If you were to say that, if I mean we've lasted a long time. We are older than I think the Beatles even existed. They weren't around that long.
You only need like they were less than 10 years
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
full recording time, you
yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah.
So it's not that tough. But this brings into a lot of other stuff,
Mhm.
and when you talk about life and the strange times that we are in, and day jobs, and bands just have to morph, and they have to be able to do that. And you got to be able to look out for your people and say, oh, he needs a little bit of time,
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
and that kind of thing. But jumping into another question, so
Sure.
that kind of answers Randy's other question, which was what happened to Wood and Wire. And, what happened is life happened, and
Right.
everybody is kind of open to playing again. But right now you're doing this, and other people are doing other things. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I'm certainly open to playing again one of these days.
Right on, man. Now, with your new album, because I just want to make sure I put it in there, I've got a question from Betsy from Berkeley. She comes
Cool.
up with really, really great questions, and she says, "What's it like recording in the bunker with the Next Waltz and Bruce Robison?" And so, or Robison. I always get it wrong, even though I played with him. But
Actually, you were right the first time. It's Robinson.
right,
I
and
had it wrong when I
did
first
you for a
started
while?
working with him. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's Robinson.
So the
Um,
bunker is in Austin, and the Next Waltz is like the label. Can
mhm.
you tell us a little bit about like how it came about, like how he got in touch with you about it? Did he know about these other songs you were writing already, or was it before that?
The bunker is in Lockhart. It's down in
Oh, I see.
Lockhart, and it's an all analog, no computers studio. So it's old school. It's got old vintage mics, old vintage plate reverb, and rack plugins and stuff, and really cool old MCI board that goes to a 16 track 2-inch tape machine. It's an amazing place. Everything out there is done live, pretty much. I mean, we have capabilities of building up tracks with individual people, but this whole record is tracked live. Everything, all the vocals are live, all of the solos, everything is live. We did a few overdub. We overdubbed harmonies, we overdubbed horns, and we overdubbed a few supplemental instruments here and there, like some tambourine and some triangle, and I think we overdubbed organ in one spot. But for the most part, what you're hearing is live performance in a studio, and we have videos of every take that's on the record. We have videos of
Wow.
them happening, and we'll release them periodically. Working in that place, in that environment, is so much fun. I love doing that because I like to perform. I'm a born performer, and the energy in my voice especially comes out when I'm performing, and I don't feel the same energy if I'm redoing a vocal take. Now I'll back
Yeah.
up and say that's how we did it in Wood and Wire as well. We did everything live, but we had Pro Tools there to, mix and match parts of takes and stuff like that. And there was a lot more capabilities, but working out there, and especially with Bruce. Bruce is a vibey guy. He's all about the vibes. How did that feel? Maybe it's not a perfect take, but if the vibe was right, that's the one we should use. And I
Yep.
love working that way because I'm
Yep.
not a perfectionist in a lot of ways, and it was just fun to just play with these other musicians and have a good time, and hope that that good time would shine through in these recordings.
So a big part of the answer is recording in a live setting with
Mhm.
musicians actually in the room with you
Mhm.
contributes to having an album that feels like a live performance.
Right, right. And those kind of things. That's how they used to do it. That was kind of the only choice back in the day.
Right.
And so the warm tone of an analog room and the warm tone of a tape machine and all the amazing vintage mics, that was standard back in the
Yeah.
60s and 70s. That was just what everyone worked with. You still had to have really good musicians and great performances, and that's what he's mostly trying to foster. And I think the limitations of the analog setup bring the best out in the musicians if they're the right kind of musicians.
Well, one thing that many of us have heard from the days, I mean, I was kind of on the cusp when I first started getting into recording and stuff. They were just barely bringing in Pro Tools, so I'm old enough for that. But the ability to edit, the ability to pitch control, the ability to play something a bunch of times and take the best take. Before that, it was like you felt this urgency to get it right, because if you got it wrong, you could get called again. You felt like you had to listen to it for the rest of your life and hear that one mistake that you made or whatever. And so there becomes this beautiful sense of urgency. And it seems like you've kind of got a perfect situation where you've got a producer who's not going to let you put something out that doesn't work.
Sure. And
And that's what he's there for.
right.
You know?
And that's part of his job, is to say that was it. That was really good. In Pro Tools, well, when you're working with tape, when you are editing or doing overdubs, let's say for example, I'm tracking a harmony and overdub.
Mhm.
It's what's called destructive editing. So if you sing it, and you have to decide then and there if that's was good enough. If you
That's
want to
it.
do it
Yeah.
again, the take that you just did is gone. And
It's
that's not the
gone.
case in Pro Tools. You can do it a million times and just sift through them later. This time you have to be like, that was the one. Even if you feel like you could get it a little better, you have to decide how long is it going to take me to get a better one, and then that's kind of the case when you're tracking with the whole band in a whole song too. You got to be like, man, that was the one. Let's just stick with it, and we can add harmonies, or maybe we'll add something a little to make it sparkle a little more. But it's live performance, baby, and that's what I love.
Yeah. And I think that your time in Wooden Wire or your time working with other stuff
Mhm.
would have to benefit that, because of again, the urgency and already being used to it. Someone who's done nothing but tracked in their bedroom, which there's nothing wrong with. Don't get me wrong. We've
Not
all
at all.
heard albums that we
Mhm.
love that. And there's no telling that you might one day, who knows, Tony Kamel might make an album that he made in his bedroom
Mhm.
one day. And we've heard people like Jerry Douglas and Peter Rowan do living room
Mhm.
stuff where they just edited things together, and it's incredible. And but that urgency probably helped you a lot, I'm guessing, when you got in there and said, well, we're just going to do takes,
Yeah, man.
because I've already got a little experience where somebody else might be like, well, they might be scared shitless, to tell you the truth. I've seen it where I've come in and said, no, we're going to cut this live. And the band looks at me like, what? Like, nah. But let's jump around a little bit, because we've got
Sure.
some really, really good stuff. We got some other really great questions. Now,
Great.
Susan Darrow from KPFT, we love KPFT over in
Yes,
Houston.
Houston, baby.
She wants to know how have your Gulf Coast roots influenced your musical style? And I think that's a great question, because from bluegrass to songwriters to blues, we in Austin sort of like, of course I'm in Canada right now, but Austinites tend to get this bubble in their head of stuff, and they're not necessarily thinking about the Deep Ellum stuff, and they're not thinking about the Lubbock stuff, and they're not thinking about the Houston stuff or the Gulf Coast like Galveston. But just speaking a little bit to it, how have your Gulf Coast roots influenced your musical style? What an eloquent question, too.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you,
for
Susan.
asking that. I love KPFT, and I'm so glad you're watching. And I love Houston. It's the real question is, how have they not?
Mm.
It's my favorite place in the world. I live here in Austin. I live in the Hill Country. I love it here, and I really do. But most of my fondest memories were growing up in Houston and in on the beach in Galveston. Really, I spent a lot of time there. So I think anyone who writes or creates art of any kind, they can't help but look back to where they came from, and especially for me. And I think one of the things in this album in particular, the Gulf Coast is a backdrop throughout the record and a theme. but in such a way that a lot of these songs I wrote as I was going through some massive changes in different parts of my life. And when I go through that and things are difficult, I always look to familiar places. I love going down to the beach. I love the Gulf Coast, and just hanging out there just makes me feel good. And I want to feel good when I'm feeling bad. So that's sort of the main way I can speak to this record. But in general, I mean, it's just been a muse of mine for so long. And a lot of that really has to do with the weird and funky and cool people I've met down there over the years, be it in Houston or Galveston or Corpus Christi or Port Arthur or whatever. It's just such a unique part of the world, and
Full of
it gets
characters, that's for
overlooked.
sure.
And I think, yeah, man. And people go down there and they think it's weird and kind of ugly sometimes, but they don't. Once you scratch below the surface, you'll see one of the most beautiful places and some of the most interesting people in the world. And I can't get enough of it. So
Now
I hope that answers your question.
sure it does, but to dive in just a little bit deeper into it for the fans that and for the people who are watching, like here on Vancouver Island or around the country or over in Berkeley or wherever, for those who haven't been to Galveston, okay, so you've got the beach thing, you've got a lot of industry right outside, you've got sort of the different artsy kind of community and stuff like that, but just speaking to the different communities that all kind of melt, because melting pots are generally where music comes from, and unexpected places. But within those particular scenes, which were the one, I mean, I'm sure all of them, but could you tell people just a little bit about what makes Galveston, that? I'm sure you could say it better than I can.
Sure, there are a lot of things. It's a port city.
Right.
There's people from all over that live there. It's a really interesting mesh of wealthy and very poor communities. But in
Cajun
general,
stuff too. You get a lot
yeah,
of Cajun stuff.
right. So
Food.
it feels Galveston really kind of feels like a little. I guess the easiest way to put it is a little New Orleans. There's a lot of beautiful architecture, old historic buildings, and great Cajun and seafood and stuff like that. The water's most of the time kind of dirty and brown, and I don't know. There's something about it that breeds some funky, strange characters. Also, there was the worst hurricane that ever hit American soil. The deadliest one ever happened in 1900. They estimate anywhere between 6 and 12,000 people died, and there are just some horrible accounts of it, of piles of bodies and rough. They
Yeah.
tried to bury bodies out at sea, and anyway,
And they built a
it's
wall.
awful. Yeah, and they built
They
a
built a
seawall
big
as a
wall, a
result.
big
Yeah,
seawall because of
yeah,
it.
and because of that event, it's considered one of the most haunted places on earth. So there's weird stuff like that. I think kind of breeds interesting people and interesting inspirations. Plus, I just grew up there. I grew up. I learned to swim in the Gulf of Mexico, and learned how to fish and surf and do things like that, and just got in lots of trouble and had great times there. I was really fearless with people growing up. Still kind of am, and I just walk up and talk to people that I thought looked interesting. Got me in trouble a few times, but it made for some good stories.
Yeah, man. Well, it's worth it too. And I think that growing up like that, kind of like my favorite people are the people that talk the same to everybody, know who they are, no matter who they are, whether they're talking to somebody who pseudo important or they're talking to somebody who's on the street, they talk to them the same way. And that's what happens, when you grow up that way. And I think it's I don't know. I think it's cool.
Yeah, man.
Well, as we're talking about it, that kind of takes us around to another question, which is, man, I love these questions and I love what they bring out of everybody. So you and I were talking a little bit before the show of all the things that musicians have to do these days that we didn't used to, like making playlists on Spotify and putting your music with other people, and how many people have podcasts. But the good news is you just started a Patreon. And within that Patreon, you have a podcast. And if I could even tie it in even further, the podcast, is it just the first episode that's with Rex Bell?
Yeah, so the podcast is out on it's out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts. and it'll be out on some others soon. But yeah, the first episode is with Rex Bell. The idea behind the podcast, and by the way, Rex Bell was Towns Van Zant's bass player and good friend. He's a great songwriter himself.
Lightning
He,
Hopkins too.
yeah, he played with Lightning Hopkins. He founded, opened the Old Quarter in Houston in the mid '60s. It stayed open until the mid '70s. He owned it different times throughout that period. Then it closed for 20 years and reopened in Galveston in the mid '90s and is still open today. He sold it a few years ago to a couple, Joel and Angela Mora, that
Yep.
wanted to keep it just like it was, maybe modernize a few things, but
But they've
for the
nailed
most
it.
part, it's the same and it's awesome. And
They've
thank
done
God for
so
them.
great.
So the idea of the podcast is to get into how we made the record and talk about the songs themselves and maybe where the songs came from. But I want to do that through other people, through Bruce and the producer, through Bruce the producer and the people that played on it. For example, and in other ways, like for example, there's a song called "Who Am I Kidding?" where I talk about going back to my old day job. Well, I have recorded the conversation with a really great indie rock musician named Caroline Rose, who's a friend of mine. She's a trained architect and she's thought about going back to do that. And she's been very successful overall. But this episode with Rex touches on my Gulf Coast roots and why I find it interesting. So instead of like saying, well, I'm from Galveston and this is what I like about it, I wanted to dig a little deeper and say, well, here's a character that really influenced me from that area. Let's hear his story. And his story is awesome. I mean, he gets into tells some great stories about Towns Van Zant and Lightning Hopkins and ZZ Top and what life in Houston was like in the '60s. It was fun. It's out now. It's called Back Down Home Beyond the Liner Notes. You can get it on those two platforms. And on my Patreon, I've got extra bits of the podcast that didn't make the final cut or whatever.
For those who are looking, that's here's where you can find that stuff right here. And when Betty Sue was on, I was kind of voguing around these things to try and make sure that everybody could see those.
Yeah.
Now, real quick, just to touch just a little bit on Rex, because all of us have stories of him and the Hemorrhage Mountain Boys.
Yeah, man.
And all these different things. So many of us. But as songwriters, almost every songwriter I know, no matter what style of music they're in, if I say, what's your favorite Towns album? They always say Live at the Old Quarter.
Yeah.
And it's this early Towns album. It's just him and a guitar. And Rex ran it back then. And there's, right before he does Rex's Blues, which is, just an incredible song, of course. He says, well, if you cut cards with Rex and you get a 3, he'll get a 2.
Yeah. Yeah. And they do the Towns Wake every year on January 1st at Old Quarter, and Rex will cut cards with people. And I don't know if it's happened, if anyone's cut, if he's got a 2 when someone else gets it, or someone gets a 3 and then he gets a 2. I'm not sure if that's happened or not, but he's just a great guy. He really is. He's been so good to me and to the band and to me. And, I got kicked out of the Old Quarter when I was like 19 at a Shake Russell show because I was misbehaving. I was being loud and drunk and stupid. I didn't know.
You didn't know the protocol?
I didn't know the protocol until I was a little older.
It's a listening room.
Right. And that was my first listening room experience. That's how it went. It was at the Old Quarter.
But we got to be cool with people like that, right, man? Like, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but
Not at all.
I've learned over the years that, look, if somebody comes in a place and they don't know, I can be an asshole to them if I want, but what's that going to serve?
Sure. Sure. I should have been removed from the situation. I'm glad I was. But
that taught you right then.
Yeah. And then, but I didn't even know about it. That was my first experience there. And then it became this place that, taught me so much about music. And eventually I was allowed to play there. And I begged Rex to let Wood and Wire play there. I promised him I'd fill it up. So he gave me the worst night of the year for them, which is Mardi Gras. And I still filled it up. Family and friends.
Sure.
We still filled it up, I should say. I've
Of
come
course.
from such a deep network in Houston and Galveston that they all they filled it up. for me. It was awesome. So then I got to play there again and again.
Right on. Apologies, Oscar.
Not at
Hey,
all.
buddy. Hey,
I thought
buddy.
that was my dog when that happened.
No, it's funny. My dogs, they like to join the show sometimes. Because of my studio is having problems with internet, I've been doing 20 questions out of the house. Here we are, folks. It's just the joy of doing an unprofessional podcast because I love it. Since we're at the midpoint right here, we've already knocked through half the podcast. We are on Austin Music TV. Thank you, Sheila Steele, for that. We are on AustinCityJams.com and all of my socials. We're here with Tony Kamel. He's talking about his new record, Back Down Home. He's talking about all the things that are going on with him right now, and we're really, really grateful to do it. Thanks, everybody, for the tips. Ooh, I like that. Yeah, bring it right up there, man.
Yeah,
Bring it right. That's it.
Yeah, right.
Ah, it looks so good. It looks so good. Now, okay, what was I going to say? Oh, wait, I wanted to jump right back into another question. Oh, and thanks, everybody, for the tips. We always appreciate that, too. I try and remember to mention that. Thank you very, very much for getting a meal. Well, that will go into this. Kate Howard says, friend of the show, what are the unexpected joys and challenges of new fatherhood and being a professional musician? And she stresses the emphasis on unexpected.
The most unexpected thing, I think, that for me was that life kind of just went on in a lot
Right?
of ways.
It didn't change that much.
It didn't change as much as I expected. This baby just sort of jumped on the train with us. Obviously, things did change. It just didn't feel as drastic as I thought it would. It's been unexpectedly easy for us. We're fortunate. The baby's healthy, and she's super cute, which is a surprise because neither me nor my wife were cute babies. She said she was, but I
You
was
saw some
certainly
pictures?
not. I don't have me close by, but it's just been a joy, and she's made me want to work harder, but also made me not sweat the things that I used to sweat as much, and I am really excited about what life is going to be like as a musician and her being part of it. I know so many musicians that do it and do it well, and I plan on being one of them.
I think that the stereotype is some sort of a movie thing where a musician, especially a dude, is out on the road, not caring, not taking care of things, philandering, blah, 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 blah. And I've, in my years and years and years, I think we have to work hard at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that having to work hard at whatever kind of relationship it is kind of breeds strength and love. And you're looking at your partner back home, whether it's just fur babies or anything, it's hard enough. With a child in the mix, it might make you even, like you said, the unexpected thing is like, what you ended up appreciating about it, and
Yeah, I think that I agree with you completely that I think that really young musicians, a lot of them get out there and have a really good time. But I'll be honest with you, most of the musicians I know are dedicated partners and, mothers and fathers and husbands and wives. And the vast majority of them are treasure what they've got at home. And I've learned a lot from musicians like that. And
I don't know why that doesn't sell as well as,
well,
I mean, he's a wreck.
Yeah, it's boring. It is.
It's
And-
like right. And why should that be the case? I will say this though. I don't know about you, but my wife is on the introverted side, and one of the reasons it's always worked so well is because she has her own thing. She has no interest in being up in what I do, and that's always made it a really, really great balance. But when I got stuck, in COVID in a small place in Vancouver Island, she's like, I'm used to you going away for 3 weeks and coming back. And then I'm just like, I miss you. And then you come back. And then I'm just like, get out of here. It's been kind of hard being all cooped up and stuff like that on her. Mm-hmm. For me, it's like, oh my God, I get to sit around and write all the time and
I know.
find all these other ways to make money at music that I never thought of. And were you prolific during the time? Did you spend a
Not
lot of time? Hmm?
not at the beginning. At the beginning, I was miserable, and I couldn't. And this isn't anything new. I go through phases of
Yeah.
writing a lot and phases of not writing at all. Sometimes long phases of not writing at all. In fact, I don't think I've written a song since I wrote a couple of songs for this record. It's been might have been almost a year, and I'm okay with that because whenever the time comes where I feel like writing, I'll buckle down really hard. But at the beginning of the pandemic, I didn't feel like it, and I didn't like the force of that was happening initially with, well, now you're home, you got to get to work, and everyone's putting out stuff online. But I went with it for a minute. I'm just gonna wait till it comes back. I did, and that's just kind of how I operate. I don't like being told what to do, so I let it sort of happen, and but that being said, when there's a concoction of me being in a creative space and a little bit of pressure and a little bit of a deadline, that's when I get the most stuff done.
I dig that too. And I have a lot of friends that push me really, really hard to be in these songwriter games where they write a song a week, and they get kind of upset when I say, hey, it's just not for me. Like, I've tried them, and that pressure is not for me. I end up writing more when I'm not in a situation like that. And I think it's really, really good that you're saying this for the songwriters out there. Some people respond really, really well to, I got to write 10 songs to get one good one. And some people wait.
Yes.
And they got to live to have something to write about. Otherwise, all we end up writing about is the road in our relationships.
True.
We got to meet some people,
Right.
and you got to do some living in my experience. But I think it's really, really good for you to say that, because I do have a lot of friends who try the songwriter games and, like me, fail miserably at it, or don't like what they write, and they feel like in some way they're not going to become a good writer, and that's not the case, because it just like anything else, come at it from all angles. Who cares if you get a song? I don't care if it takes a year and a half to get one good one. I want one good one, not 100 shitty ones.
Yeah, I'd say if I wrote a song a day for a year, I'd still get the same amount of good songs. As
Right?
if I was operating normally, I'd just get 20 good ones and 345 bad ones. So, I I and 20 is generous, frankly.
Right.
And
Agreed.
I think that it's I would say if there's one thing that is and I don't have a system to the writing thing, but the one thing I do and make sure I do and might force a little is rewriting
Mm.
and editing and looking at songs as a whole, as a group. If I'm on this record, as we were putting the songs together, I showed Bruce some songs. He dug a lot of them, didn't dig some of them, so I got rid of those and then narrowed it down, wrote a few more, and then I rewrote and went through and found, as I saw this Gulf Coast theme start to emerge, I went through and rewrote and found appropriate places. Didn't want to force anything, but found appropriate places to uh, poke that theme out a little bit more, just in little places. And I think that can do a lot. I think that's something that I'll look for, not repeating certain words in a song and stuff. Just editing and rewriting. I think for me, that's a part of the process I think is really important for the songs to be good.
I think a lot of people had an English teacher, who said good writing is rewriting, and
Sure.
those of us who took that into songwriting find it it's okay, and it's like, yeah, man, I want to go back and I want to make sure that things work. Now, so what you were just talking about with Bruce is such a luxury for those of us who don't end up with that producer who really understands what we do. And you have to trust that producer.
Hmm.
I've been in situations where, I was doing an album and somebody said, well, these two songs that you want to do, they're not Americana. And I said, well, then let's just make them Americana because these are already a hit with my fans. And sometimes you have to stand your ground like that with a producer. But Did you have any songs that were like you had to like, hey man, I don't know, give this one more listen, or did you just go, nope, he knows what he's doing?
I'd say more the latter when I think back on it. But he was super open. Like if I was, there were some songs I was real into. I think in this instance, for the most part, we saw eye to eye on almost everything, um, as far as song selection goes. Um, and I would say it's the type of situation over there at the next waltz where they give me the final say, which isn't
Sure.
isn't necessarily the right thing to
Uh-uh.
do, but
Well, it's
maybe
a
it
balance of
is.
that too, right?
I,
Yeah.
I thought I wouldn't get that, and I was open to that because
You were ready
yeah,
to
I
let
was
them
like
make that decision.
yeah, I liked what they were making, so I think to myself like if it comes out like some of these songs they've been recording, it would be fine. And but there was one song that I wanted to cut off the record, and it's not on there. And
Yeah.
everybody, but me wanted it on there, and it's not on there. So if that tells you anything, they put the artist first.
Well, there you go. And it's really interesting. Angie Pearl Day's right here. Hi.
Hey
And you
Angie,
say,
good
where
to
do you
hear
find
from
a
you.
producer? There's a
Yeah.
couple of things that come out of this question too, because what Tony is describing, everybody, what you're describing is what a good producer does. Not just song selection, putting together a band, but also being able to kind of back up and from a bird's eye view see the whole project as an album, you know. And we used to joke and say, the best producers were the ones who had the best Rolodex back in the days where we had people's phone numbers on a Rolodex because they'd get the right players that would make the album sound great.
Mhm.
And the live musicians weren't always the studio ones. But I think it's much more than that, and I think it has a lot to do with what you're talking about. Producers often find you.
Mhm.
I mean,
There's a
how? I mean, go ahead.
well, to answer Angie's question, there's a lot of different ways you can find a producer that'll just take your money and
Yep.
they just do it. Or in my case with Bruce, he was the lead producer. We co-produced this record really. Like uh, there were some songs where I was like, this is really what I want on this song. And he was like, cool, let's do it. And there were some songs where I was like, I don't know what this song should be like. And then he was like, let's try this. But sorry, I kind of got ahead of myself. I've been working with Bruce in his studio for 4 years or so, as either a sideman coming in to play some guitar, banjo on certain recordings. Wooden Wire did do a song with the Next Waltz for one of their compilations, and we also recorded an EP. Wooden Wire recorded an EP there that was sort of a John Hartford tribute EP. We used the studio. Bruce was there, but Danny Barnes was the producer, and we just asked Danny to do it because we liked the way his mind worked. We did it in a day. It was a quick thing, and it's called the Woodshed Sessions Volume 2, and it sounds cool. But anyway, most of the time you hear about producers first, and then you can either approach them or they hear about you, and y'all strike up a relationship,
Right.
and then you decide maybe we'll work together. There are instances where a band will come together and go, okay, we have time to make a record. Let's hit up, you know, this producer
So and
we know
so.
of, and they're going to be this much money. So let's do it. And the producer still has to be like, they have to say yes and accept the project because their name's going to be on it. So there are lots of different ways. Sometimes if you're going to make a more of a low budget um, recording, you might just want to get a musician that has made a lot of records and has a good ear and wants to go in and guide you as a producer. And they do all kinds of things. And there's different levels of producers. In Wood and Wire, Dom has produced a couple records, one in particular, and Billy has produced a couple records. So I've never been a producer. I don't know. I think I could probably do it here and there, but it's not it's not what I do. There's a lot of different ways of doing it, but it usually
Yeah.
starts with a relationship that's already there.
I think what's really good also about what you said was the organic approach can be such a great one. They find out about you, you find out about them, you start talking, then you decide. if it's kind of like I approached so and so because they made this and because I want to do that, that's a touchy one. I mean, it can
Sure.
work, but it's a real a situation where you can end up with, oh, they're just taking the money,
Right.
and you don't
Right.
know, that their heart has really really gotten into it.
Yeah.
Although again, like anything else, that could be the case.
Certainly happens. That's what they do. And you know, if a band is even if a band is the band is the band. You
Yeah,
can't make a bad band better, really. I guess you can make them sound better. You can't make the songs better songs. So it ultimately starts there. The producer will just help you get them out.
I agree with that completely. I also know that there are producers out there that are like, uh, uh, you know, um, everything has to be perfect and in time. If you just listen to like two Tom Petty albums back to back, and one's Rick Rubin and one is the guy from ELO, Jeff Lynne. One is everything has to be perfect and in time, and every strum is perfect, and one is we just cut this thing live, and
Hmm.
the strength of the songs they're just as famous.
Sure.
They have
Sure.
hit people in just the way because that was a moment in time when they did it this way, and that was a moment in time when they did it this way. And I
Right.
always remember this story about Steve Albini, and I was listening to something he did like Nirvana and a lot of punk bands and a lot of rock stuff, and he said, "You'll never hear me in the studio say, 'Hey, can you make that hi hat a little bit more peppery?'" He's like, no, when I get in, I record the band the way they do it. And I think there's a lot of approaches, and finding the right producer has to do with that as well. And
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For
you
sure.
kind
And
of got that with
it's
Bruce, it sounds like.
Bruce was great, and he's got a funny way of communicating. He's just really like it's got to be like he uses a lot of comparisons, and his music knowledge is far bigger than mine. So a lot of
Vast.
times I didn't know what he was talking about. I was like, I haven't heard that, but let's think of something else. But it was easy. It really was like
That's
the
the best.
musicians were
I
so
love
good,
hearing
and
that.
everything was really like as far as choosing the musicians go, there were a few that I had in mind, and that's it. And then he was like, "All right, well then we'll get these guys in." And I knew who all these other people were, but hadn't played with them very much necessarily. And as far as the songs go, on a few of the songs, I really had something in my head, and he went with that. And on a few of them, and we worked together to find that, or he would make some adjustments. The horns on the record, I wasn't sure we should have horns on the record.
Yeah.
I really wasn't. I was like, I don't know. I love horns, but I'll probably won't be able to recreate it on stage very often. And man, I'm so glad we tried it out because I think it sounds really cool. And he was that's something he contributed specifically that I think, and there was way more than that. That his this wouldn't be what it is without his insight and ideas. But we both had like I wanted to do the last song change. I really wanted to do old timey with just fiddle and vocals and background vocals, uh, and it worked.
Yeah.
There weren't any other real discussions on what we were going to do because he was like, "That's cool, let's try it," and it worked. So it
You
was a
gotta love
really
it when
fun
that happens.
symbiotic relationship. It was a blast.
People need to know that records can be fun too, and that for crying out loud, it's playing music. It's
Hmm.
play. It's supposed to be play for crying out loud, and that it does not have to be. As much as you take the craft seriously, I like to say I
Yeah,
take the craft seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. And that seems to work out for me okay. Quick
it's a good way to
question
put it.
before we get towards the end. Matt the electrician, who I know you've worked with in the
Oh,
past,
Matt,
has a great question.
let's hear it.
What's your woodshed routine for flat picking and banjo?
Cool. They're different. They really
Ah,
are. Flat picking woodshed routine usually consists of um, slowing things. They both consist. I say the main thing for any woodshedding around difficult musical playing is slowing things way, 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 way down. Uh, and that is just sometimes not fun. And that's what if I teach a lesson, I'm like, some of this just isn't fun. If you really want to learn it, it's just not going to be fun. So I'll slow it so down, playing it so slowly to where it's just kind of driving me crazy and work my way up. And as far as flat picking goes, if I want to woodshed something, I find something specific, a specific solo fiddle tune or idea that's been played, and slow it down in my computer. There are apps you can use to slow that stuff down,
Ah,
and then
okay.
try to break it down that way, and it gets real minute. When I woodshed clawhammer banjo, it's all based around the bum ditty, which is something you can look up if you want to learn.
Bum diddy bum
And
diddy
it's a
bum diddy
yeah,
bum diddy
bum
bum diddy.
ditty, bum ditty, bum ditty. It's
Yep.
a little weird, and same idea goes with slowing it down. But what I like to find in a song I'm learning on the clawhammer banjo is a meditative melodic state that's
Hmm.
repeating over and over again. That's what old time music is you play the melody over and over and over and over until
There's a
you
drone.
yeah, until there's a drone and you end up, you know, it's almost like you're in a psychedelic world or something. And that's what I tried to find when I learned something new on the banjo. I hope that
I love
answers your
that, man.
question, Matt. So slow on down, baby.
I
You
think that's
probably do
it's
that though.
key, and you can't play fast until you can play it really, 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 really slow, and you got to break things into chunks. And people
Mhm.
don't realize that if you practice slowly, you will get fast way faster than if you practice fast.
Yeah, I'm
Practicing
not talking.
fast, you know.
I tell people that are I don't have many students, but I do have one right now, and but it's like I'm not talking about playing it slow for a whole day. I'm talking about playing it slow for
No.
a little while, a couple of minutes, then speeding it up for a couple of minutes. But especially with flat picking, people want to start playing like Tony Rice right away, and they work backwards. They start with the solos. You got to start with the rhythm. What chords are being played?
Absolutely.
What scales are we referencing? And break it down so you shrink the number of notes that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Basically,
You can't start with his version of Church Street Blues, you know? But what
no.
a great one to learn
Yeah.
everything. I mean, when you get Church Street Blues, the Norman Blake song for Tony Rice, you've
I
got
can't play that.
you've
Dominic
got the
Dominic Fisher, the wooden wire bass player, he could play that perfectly. It's really nice when
yeah.
he does it on the guitar.
There was a time. There was a time when I could play it.
I believe it.
But now I can still play Old Train.
Sweet.
But yeah. Matthew Simmons asks, "Are you still doing lessons?" And I
Yep.
assume that is for you.
Yeah, man. Still doing lessons here and there. I can't do as many as I used to because I live out in Dripping Springs, and I don't really like doing virtual lessons. Um, I'm not good at it. I think it's a great medium and people are good at it, uh, but I do try to do lessons once every couple of weeks. I'll spend a day to do some lessons. It's hard because our schedule is kind of. I'm still figuring out the daily schedule, but sure, hit me up, man. We'll talk about it.
Well, there you go. And I don't know about you, but I find teaching, I can't do it when I'm on the road. And then when I come back, I'll get people. I find that, like a lot of people want to do the once a week thing. I like to give them a full hour, let them video the thing,
Yeah,
and give them so much to work with so that they can teach themselves
that's the way to do it.
and get on the road to the hustle and not just like, okay, well, just learn this lick this week. That's not enough, and I also find it very rewarding when I have time to teach. I love it. I really
Yeah,
love it.
it can be a lot of fun if you got students that practice. It's
Yeah.
hard when they don't because then you feel bad,
Well, yeah, and
even
you
though
say,
they
"Hey,
were
do you
supposed.
really want to do this?"
Yeah, it's like, man. So I guess we can go over what we did last week again, but
Yeah,
you know,
and then I feel bad charging
yeah,
you.
right, exactly.
Well, as we get close to the end of the show here, we're going to stay online once we go off on the television. Real big thanks to Austin Music Television, as usual. Also to AustinCityJams.com. My guest is Tony Kamel. Here's some information for the people who are on the television watching as to how you can find out about Tony's new record, Back Down Home. If you go to, I've got a playlist on Spotify. It's well, actually, you're on 3 of my playlists, so just jump over
Nice.
there and check out one of those.
Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
man. Well, you've been helping me out with that stuff for a long time, and I mean, I just do it because I'm a fan. So
Likewise.
jump over there and find out about things like that. But this is where you find out TonyKamelMusic.com, Patreon.com, Tony Kamel Music. You also get the podcast there. Thanks everybody who threw us a tip today. That's how I keep this thing running and how I get maybe a tank of gas for Tony. He's a new dad, so make sure you put something in there for him. And I don't know, we got to just try every angle we can. And before we get off the air on television and we move to the online just for a couple of minutes to finish up,
Cool.
I only have one question that I ask my guests every week that is a Jeff Plankenhorn question.
Let's hear it.
I always want to know what someone's guilty pleasure music is. I
Okay.
want to know what music you listen to that has nothing to do with bluegrass or folk or the next waltz. What do you, and it doesn't have to be guilty. It just has to be something, because a lot of people are like, well, I'm not guilty. Like, I've had great singer-songwriters come on and say they love the Spice Girls. And it all
Sure.
started because people found out that when I was a little kid, when my mom was playing me Stevie Wonder and she was playing Jackson Browne and she was playing these things, she also would slip in Barry Manilow. And when I would
Yeah.
hear "Can't Smile Without You," I get a soft spot whether I, go buy the albums or not. So I am secretly a Fanalo, and I like to know, what people like that's kind of off the beaten path of what they do.
I think Billie Eilish is awesome.
There you go.
The stuff that she put
Me
out,
too.
it's so unique and weird, and she and her brother did it together in their bedroom, and it obviously was very successful, but a lot of successful music isn't very good. This is some cool, unique stuff. I know it's not a secret, but I think people would be surprised that I love it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not a secret. Like you're not shy about it. You're not. And again, this is a perfect example. It's not a guilty pleasure.
Sure.
You enjoy it.
I
you dig it.
legitimately enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. My problem sometimes with the stuff is that the lyrics, even though I really, really love the production, I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure the lyrics, not Billie Eilish. Sometimes I'll really love the production, but I'll be like, I know this is geared towards like a 13-year-old girl. You know? And so it's hard for me to jump into my feminine side and dig that, with Billie Eilish and the production, but even the songs,
Sure.
you got great writing too.
And I heard recently the recent Harry Styles record, was surprised as well. I thought it has some really cool stuff on it.
That's a really good one to mention too, because I've had a number of musicians my age and older say, well, people will say, well, what would happen if the Beatles came around today? And it's like, well, they would turn them into a boy band. They would turn them into a boy band, and they would probably make them do what they want. But just like Harry Styles, I mean, you know what happened when we all first saw Justin Timberlake on Saturday Night Live? We went, oh shit, now I gotta like Justin Timberlake because he's good.
I know.
And it was like all of us were like, oh, I'll never dig, and then you're like, no, it's great,
And I think that pop music has gotten a lot better. I think in the early 2000s, it was pretty weird. In the late 90s. Recently, it's really simplified itself down to like good singing and melodies, and even if it's auto-tuned, it can be cool, but it's just simplified. Now it's like you hear a really low bass and a beat and singing and maybe one other thing, and I think that's made pop music a lot cooler.
Right on, man. Right on. So Harry Styles and Billie Eilish are favorites of Tony Kamel, and that's exactly what I'm talking about, because why do we want to stick in one box with our own music or anybody else's?
You'd be too boring for me, man.
Right? All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Since we're off of the television now, we can do as many calls to action as we like. And so if you don't know, guys, what I really, really, really want you to do is one more time, I'm going to say go to TonyKamelMusic.com. That's where you're going to find the hub for everything that's going on with Tony right now. You're going to find links to the new record, Back Down Home, which just came out. Right below that, you can see patreon.com/Tony Kamel Music. Like me, he's starting a Patreon. Well, I've had mine for a couple years, but Patreon is a really, really great way. It's you directly to the artist that you dig. I mean, it's just a one-to-one relationship. There's nobody in between,
Yeah, I'm pumped about it. I think I have one patron right now. I literally
That'll change after
started it
today,
the
you
other
guys.
day. I hope so. But check out the record, check out the podcast, and please, if you live in Austin, come to the Continental Club on October 15th and 16th. Got 2 nights there. The Tender
Oh,
Things are doing the late night slot, and
I love the Tender
yeah,
Things, man. I am
and
such a huge fan.
they're great. And then on Saturday night, we only have an opener Saturday night, who's Melissa Carper, who put out one of my favorite records this year. She's amazing.
So October 15th and what at the Continental?
15th and 16th, 2 nights.
15th and 16th, Continental. I'm putting that right there in all of the chats on the various thing and McNoodles. Thanks everybody for the tips. That's how they keep the thing going. That's the last time I promise I'll mention the tips. Double checking on all the questions. Bruce Robinson, flat pinking, professional musician, father, Gulf Coast roots. Oh, we never asked what was it like going out with Robert Earl Keen, but I mean, what are you going to say?
It was so fun. I'll say something about that real quick.
Do it.
Please.
I
thought
Take
that
your time.
Rowdy crowd, I was just by myself playing solo. I thought that rowdy crowd was going to destroy me and just talk through the whole set and not just, kind of just tolerate me. They were awesome. I want to thank the people of New Orleans and Oxford, Mississippi for partying with me. I love playing solo by myself. I'm pretty good at it, and I can get a rowdy crowd going, but I grew up going to Robert Earl Keen shows, and I know back then, if I had seen me playing, I'd probably be talking to my friend or yelling at the guy. So I was really pleasantly surprised and had a blast. I'd love to do it again.
His crowd has grown older and wiser.
Sure.
With life. And
there are a lot of young people out there too, though. It was cool.
Absolutely, but I think that now they're a little bit initiated, now that his crowd is mixed, and it's not just the Feeling Good Again crowd, which is one of the greatest songs that has ever come out of whatever our scene is.
For
Are
sure.
you kidding? The imagery in that song is like, you can't not feel Bandera in that song.
Beautiful.
But I felt it a few years back when I filled in for Rich Brotherton,
Right.
because he had gotten in a small car accident and he was okay, but he had to go out, and I had to go out and fill in for him, and it was so beautiful seeing the crowd had kind of grown in appreciation for Robert's music, songwriting, and everything about it, and the band, and yeah, man, I'm sure you were well received, and I hope you get to do that again with him. Well, man, stay on with me, and everybody, see you next week. Let's see. Next week we have, I think, Mama Duke. Let me double check real quick. Sorry, it's that unprofessional thing with me. Yep, Mama Duke next week. Ray Bonneville after that, then Malott, then Eric Tesmer. Can't get anybody good to do this show. What can I say?
I know, man. That's why you had to put me in here, I guess.
Yeah. We were slumming it today with Tony Kamel. Just kidding. God, my wife says that people don't get my sarcasm. Please, I did not mean that.
Hey, man, I got the foot and mouth disease too.
Exactly right. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks,
and
guys.
everybody,
Appreciate
go
it.
check out his music. It's out now and it's beautiful. All right. Bye.